Brawl Stars is admittedly in a bit of a state right now, ironic considering I was praising the game less than a month ago. It seems with Brawl Arena finally here, some massive issues have reared their unsightly heads regarding some of the internal foundations behind Brawl Stars, with the servers recently going down for an unfathomable amount of time considering a newly implemented event known as Hypercharged Unleashed broke the game to a crippling degree. Amongst other issues involving needing to rotate your screen to avoid the game completely breaking, at least if you're using an iPhone or an iPad. Although the Brawl Stars development team are now actively working to reduce the impact of these issues, I feel as if there have been many things left unaddressed regarding the general state of Brawl Stars. Whether that be the game or the community, things are a slight mess right now, and I believe it's about time someone talked about it. So, those bugs. Something as small as an event involving hypercharges should not have crippled the server so hard to the point where the game became inoperable for a small amount of time. Now, this wasn't disrupted for an unfathomable amount of time, neither was it the end of the world, but it highlighted some systemic issues that perhaps stem from the core server management processes that transpire behind the scenes. According to various reports, this bug caused a catastrophic failure of the Brawl Stars servers, even going as far as temporarily affecting their saved data, which has now been mostly recovered by the time of editing this video. How did this happen? Quite honestly, I have no clue, but it seems as if the implementation of this latest event somehow managed to break how the matchmaking worked entirely to the point where it still remains buggy as of right now, considering there was a long moment after the maintenance break ended where people couldn't get into games whatsoever. I get that there are certain processes behind this. You've got to program the event, assign all sorts of functions to that event, tell the server to place this event inside the matchmaking pool, update the UI on the client side so people can join the game whilst actively having the traits of that event isolated to that specific matchmaking pool. But I believe something went wrong when it came to the isolation of the traits of this event, leading it to spread everywhere and cause massive issues with the server to the point where the game had to shut down for unplanned maintenance. It seems that the bizarre circus was also hunting for wild iPhone and iPad players, considering for a huge amount of time there was a huge failure point within the code causing the game to crash 100% of the time. Now, as mentioned above, there was a workaround involving the rotating of the screen that has been fixed with an optional patch, but it still presents itself to this day. It's kind of embarrassing how this happened to begin with though. I know games have their failure points and bugs do naturally happen, but this speaks volumes as to how tremendously mismanaged the game's internal programming is, considering a simple event and patch aimed at introducing Brawl Arena was able to completely break the game. Talk about a spooky coincidence. Now, I'm not trying to completely complain about the issue, more on the notion of complaining later, but I sincerely hope the Brawl Stars developers take the steps required to fully polish up their code whilst fixing the game behind the scenes, considering I've personally encountered many crashes and bugs despite my internet connection and device being spotless in regards to issues. These issues might be presented because I played the game on a Z Flip, and well, those things have a really funky aspect ratio, I won't lie, but playing Brawl Stars has been a generally unstable experience as of lately, and I know I'm not the only one affected by such issues. It feels as if the game really shouldn't be this unstable, and it's slightly worrying as to how the developers are treating the game behind the scenes, considering I don't think rotating your phone is really supposed to fix such a catastrophic bug. The same goes for the fact that servers metaphorically burn down whenever managing a mere event, which is something that shouldn't have transpired to begin with, at least if the game was well maintained within its internal code, especially whenever factor in the basic principle of quality assurance. I just really hope they weren't rushing out this update so hard to the point where they forgot to test everything. Anyways, with that out of the way, I think it's about time I get to the real point about this video. This is going to be some angry rant regarding Brawl Stars dying or whatever. I personally think Brawl Stars is actually flourishing in one of the healthiest states it's ever been in regarding the game's health if we exclude the obvious bugs. Yeah, not all games are perfect, and well, I think the community of Brawl Stars sums that up so well. I apologize if this is a direct call out, but man, does the Brawl Stars community complain too much about some things. I know I'm probably going to contradict myself later, but if we're going to talk about the hypercharges for a second, there are 5 new ones within the game that are playable and ready for use. Plus, these hypercharged brawlers are perhaps questionably balanced to some, but it feels like the community more generally has been way too scrutinizing regarding most of the things within this game as of lately. I know it was already bad with hypercharges and Kairos addressing it and those being released, but it feels like the general instability of the game mixed in with the 5 brawlers receiving all new hypercharges really fed the walls regarding to how often people complain about this game. I am fully aware that yes, prices have been going up, but you do realize you're getting more than you would pay for like a good year or two ago, right? I feel as if barking at the game developers just because they want to make money in a fair way was just one of the many things that are beginning to weigh down this game as of lately. Brawl Stars is in no way perfect. I'll get to that at a later point inside of this video, but it's a whole lot better than a lot of the other games within Supercell's arsenal as of right now. It feels as if every single feature that's added comes under extreme scrutiny. The same goes for every cosmetic or bonus pack as well, as it just gets labelled as being paid to win, as well as people spreading the rhetoric that it's falling from grace, even though the game is perfectly fine, minus some issues here and there. If you really want to see the game at its most gluttonous, all you need to do is look back towards the earlier state of the game roughly 2 or 3 years ago, where many of the currencies were divided, especially the different gear currencies. The game has come so far since then, although it's got some nagging issues such as the fact that trophy pushing as of right now requires you to sweat so hard that you become dehydrated. It's not dying or floundering. I'm fully aware that a community doesn't define a game, but expectations like this happen to be one of the few justifications I have for making this video. People just complain way too much, and it contributes to the state of Brawl Stars softly declining, especially after so long. When you restrict the freedom of the developers and criticize them for trying to make the meekest amount of money from a game they've worked tirelessly to keep as free to play friendly and accessible as possible, that's when real issues arise. It's probably one of the contributing factors as to why the most recent update was so broken and felt so rushed. A contributing factor to this is the fact that the developers probably feel the need to feed their community, therefore crunching and ruining the quality of the updates instead with massive glitches, but that's an effect that nobody wants. Now, don't get me wrong, some of these complaints are warranted and I'll get to them shortly, but a good majority of them are out of the Brawl Stars developers' hands, considering there's only so much they can do that people won't see as being disruptive nowadays. If they want to make money or sell a booster pack, expect everyone to absolutely gun for them, claiming that the game is paid to win, even though they can attain the very same benefits that come from the theoretical booster pack or value pack just by playing the game regularly. There's nothing stopping people from progressing through the game, even if it does take some time. It's actually worth it, unlike some other Supercell games that exist out there such as Clash Royale. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, there are a few community complaints I honestly feel are warranted, and we shall begin with the club game's reforms. Now, there's this new thing that's been introduced to the game known as the Mega Pig. It's essentially the club game's replacement that's supposedly meant to be much more fair on the players, considering everyone from the most casual to the most competitive can compete. However, I do see some issues arising regarding a disproportionate amount of effort being required for an honestly lackluster reward. I'll throw up a screenshot of the anticipated rewards for the 250 club wins that every player received once the Mega Pig, sorry, I can't take that seriously, ends up exploding after those wins are achieved, and well, the amount of bling being offered here is pitiful. The gold is helpful, but it's not really a rewarding amount either. I guess the power points are a fair amount, but then again, that's barely a fifth of a brawler upgrade if you're in some of the higher levels, and well, the entire system relies on Starr Drops being motivating rewards. As much as I enjoy Starr Drops, sometimes they can feel like the equivalent of tossing a brick at a homeless person before telling him to build a house with it. Don't get me wrong, I prefer the newer system over the older system, as quite honestly it sucked, and well, I think my bad luck is a contributing factor to this opinion, but it really does feel like ever since the reigning Starr Drops event, the Starr Drops themselves have felt extremely underwhelming to the point where I believe they were nerfed, as I currently have pulled 10 rares in a row and only broke that streak today with a super rare popping out of nowhere. Whilst we're discussing Starr Drops and community complaints, when it came to such a catastrophic failure that transpired behind the scenes and subsequent unplanned maintenance that followed, thousands of people were unable to complete their daily quest or receive their Starr Drops, nor could they push trophies or earn rewards from Star Road or Trophy Road. As much as I do appreciate the developers for being transparent, it really does feel like one complimentary Starr Drop for 8 hours worth of unplanned maintenance and people potentially using their save data wasn't the right form of compensation, considering people can earn 3 by grinding through matches they couldn't play because the game was down. I'm not sure if using Starr Drops as a main front for progression is really a good idea. They'll never be as terrible as brawler boxes, but it really does feel like they're a lot more random than they used to be, and that's usually a bad thing, especially considering the fact that the Brawl Stars dev team straight up refused to allow you to work for a specific rarity of Starr Drops within that Mega Pig rework to the club games, meaning you can straight up work for all of that time only to receive nothing except a few brawler points, gold, and bling. I get that every little helps, but the fact that Starr Drops have been increasingly meddling in regards to how people progress inside of Brawl Stars is slightly worrying, as they feel like they're the free-to-play equivalent of gambling and aren't really rewarding alternatives compared to some of the other systems that were in place, especially in comparison to earning those club points that you could use to buy specific brawlers or cosmetics. You can dedicate all of that time to earning your Starr Drops only to end up pulling 3 rares after a good few sessions of grinding out the game, which becomes even more humiliating and tedious if you're a high level player and the progression rate somewhat hits a brick wall. Are these complaints a little nitpicky? Yes, I will admit that much, but Starr Drops were initially designed to be more rewarding, and as of right now, I don't think they're the most rewarding alternative to something such as the club games in the form of the Mega Pig being introduced. At least with club games and leagues, you knew what you were going to end up unlocking as you completed your requests and played through your matches against other players as part of other clubs. Nowadays, you barely know what the hell you're earning, and sometimes it just isn't worth the effort for people to gamble their luck like that, especially when it takes up their time. I personally just don't believe that Starr Drops should be having a major point inside the progression pipeline. I think other alternative ways of earning brawlers, bling, power points, and gold should be available, as opposed to putting in all that time only to feel disappointed by the time your adventure through the game is done. Speaking of community disappointment though, Charlie. I don't have an issue with the design or the way she feels during combat. If anything, she's got the entire community simping for her, and I respect that. The one issue that the community does have with her though is her hypercharge. You're telling me people are expected to buy the Brawl Pass only to end up with a hypercharge utilizing 3 spiders that can die thanks to another brawler sneezing on them. I get that she's all around an extremely good brawler with fairly balanced abilities, gears and gadgets, but for a brawler being brought in with 5 new hypercharges are being introduced, she is admittedly a little underwhelming, and I don't believe upgrading her to level 11 is currently worth it for such a disappointing hypercharge. Whilst Colette now has a literal spirit that follows her and deals damage along the way as she chases down her victims, and Rosa quite literally slows down people around her, with both of these hypercharges respectively awarding temporary stat boosts, you've got Charlie, who's such an amazing brawler, completely let down by a relatively underwhelming hypercharge and stat boost to go with it. I'm aware that Brawl Stars are most likely going to balance things as time goes on and she's going to get a boost at some point, but the motivation behind making this video happens to be addressing some of the minor issues within Brawl Stars in the hope that some people can understand my personal gripes with them and that they might hopefully end up being rectified in the future. At least everything except the wider Brawl Stars community complaining whenever they sense the developers are attempting to maintain their livelihood by increasing the price of a cosmetic by 1 gem. On the other hand, one thing that I can absolutely agree with the community on and is desperately in need of some addressing happens to be the broader ranking system, power league and trophy pushing more generally too. I have a friend inside on my Discord server named JP. He's responsible for some of the information found within this video, but he was recently attempting to push Shelly beyond 500 trophies whilst attempting to break into Gold League within the game's power league system, and let me tell you, for someone who I consider extremely skilled at the game, their struggles spoke volumes as to how truly unfair alongside broken the current system is inside of Brawl Stars. If there's one thing that desperately needs a matchmaking rework right now, it's power league and the higher trophy ranges inside of Brawl Stars. Especially team modes, considering you can find yourself facing absolute sweats whilst you've got randomized teammates that can barely draw the letter A with the crayon residue they've got left on their fingers from that day's preschool session. I have witnessed an immeasurable amount of my peers as of recently just absolutely be dunked on within Power League, and besides, the exclusive rewards aren't really that worth it in the form of sacrificing your sanity either. I can understand that Power League is more competitively oriented compared to just trophy road or random matchmaking, but combine that with the fact that Starr Drops are currently in a bit of a state and the fact that they're seeping into the progression pipeline in the form of the Mega Pick replacing the club game's reward system, and well, you can begin to see why I'm slightly worried. I'm personally concerned that the game will eventually create a path so linear regarding its progression to the point where the game isn't fun for anyone to play anymore. The hyperchargers thus far have introduced some much needed dynamic gameplay, but in my opinion, I honestly just see them as buffed version of gears, gadgets and abilities that just combine them into one massive offensive or defensive wave. Things will undoubtedly improve, the game's stability will obviously fix itself with more patches and with more time being taken to maintain the servers behind the scenes. The same goes for hyperchargers getting more interesting, perhaps Starr Drops being buffed considering the amount of disappointment that has been coming from opening them after a hard day's work is already reaching a high level. Combine that with the Mega Pig, a literal reward system that somewhat relies on Starr Drops for it to be worthwhile, and you get yet another problem within the form of the rewards being relatively underwhelming for the effort you put in to receive them. These things, the instability, the hyperchargers admittedly needing some more time in the oven, the Mega Pick, which I honestly don't think should have happened considering tweaking club games alongside the league just a slight bit would have fixed everything, accompanied by the disappointment behind the Starr Drops becoming the primary way the game rewards you, not only threatens the way people can enjoy the game, it also squashes any form of incentive to play for the rewards regardless if you buy the Brawl Pass or not, as nobody wants to play for a chance to gamble. At the very least, the club games, quests and leagues that we've gotten relatively familiar with were somewhat predictable and you can muster up your efforts to save tokens for specific rewards. That just simply isn't possible anymore considering the rewards that you get for cracking open the newly introduced Mega Pick contrast massively in the predictability alongside the motivation department, as I'm sure not everyone wants to trade away a really good system for one that gives you almost nothing to be excited about. I know this might be a statement that goes a bit too far, but it's honestly giving me Clan Wars 2.0 vibes from Clash Royale, and that's not a good thing. However, this video wasn't designed to straight up hate against Brawl Stars, only draw attention to some of the nagging issues within the game. I have full trust within the Brawl Stars development team for them to listen and address some of the issues within the game and those mentioned inside of this video thus far, considering the game just simply can't be perfect, and I will admit, there are so many elements within the game to the point where balancing everything must be an extremely arduous task. I'm also aware that in a way, I'm completely contradicting my earlier point that I made about the Brawl Stars community complaining a little too much. Apologies if I did sound like I was complaining about the game, especially over so many small issues, but the state of Brawl Stars within the past month has admittedly been a little concerning, and I knew shedding some light onto these issues as someone who has notoriously criticised Supercell before was the right thing to do, especially when it feels like a good majority of these recent updates have felt slightly rushed compared to the usual steady pace that Brawl Stars has whenever testing alongside deploying their updates. And like the other games I criticised though, I have full faith that the Brawl Stars development team will take these issues amongst many others into consideration when it comes to patching the game and refining this masterpiece further to ensure that the game is enjoyable for everyone. Now, I don't have the experience to tell the developers how to fix these problems within within the game. But how would you fix the game, and what would you fix in particular? Feel free to let me know in the comments below as I read every single one. With that out of the way, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you have a wonderful day and may the cosmos shine upon you.